Hey everybody, this is Matt from the Greene County Historical Society, and this is our next installment of the L.K. Evans Pioneer History of Greene County Reading Club. Thank you for joining us. As you recall, last week we talked a bit about the Native Americans in the area and the early settlers and how they lived together and so on and so forth. This week we're talking very specifically about Indian massacres. I'm here right now at a rock ledge just along Dunkard Creek, right on the PA West Virginia line, not too far from Brave. And we do know from accounts that a man did hide here in the 1770s during an Indian attack. So we're going to get started, and just to give us a little bit of an overview of how some of the problems with the Native Americans started, we're going to be reviewing a clip that we did at the Greene County Historical Society last year that talks about the Spicer Massacre and Dunmore's War and the events leading up to the Indian attacks in the 1770s. So thank you for joining us, and stay with us. Thank you. Welcome to the Greene County Historical Society. My name is Matthew Cumbridge. I'm the Executive Director. This is our new Artifact of the Month series. This month we are featuring the iron from the Spicer family massacre. Many students of Greene County history may recall that the Spicer Massacre took place in June of 1774. In the early days of settlement in Greene County, Europeans and Native Americans existed peacefully. They often traded with each other, lived side by side. In fact, one was indistinguishable from the other. That began to change after the French and Indian War and culminated in the attack on Chief Logan's family. In June of 1774, a group of Indians attacked the Spicer family plot in Dunkard Township, Greene County. William the father was out cutting wood while Betsy was ironing clothes outside the cabin. The whole family was killed except for William Spicer Jr. and Betsy, his older sister. During the attack, Betsy attempted to escape, and she was carrying this very iron with her. As she ran, she threw the iron in the bushes near the cabin. Her brother William was captured also. Betsy and William were both released by treaty later on. However, William chose to remain with his captors. There are many theories as to what happened to William in his later years, yet that could be a story in and of itself. Betsy, after she was freed, returned home and found this iron in the bushes just where she had thrown it. This iron stayed in the Spicer family for many generations through their descendants, the Bowen family, and it was later donated to the Greene County Historical Society. This iron represents the tough times and struggles that our early settlers made when they lived here in the 1770s, 80s, and 90s. Indian attacks were quite common, and there are probably at least 10 to 20 reports just in Greene County alone. So please come out here to see this artifact and many others. The Greene County Historical Society opens April 27th, 2019. We'll be hosting a pancake breakfast and a 5-day run, and we'll be inviting everybody to come in and see this wonderful museum. We house well over 30,000 artifacts, much like this and many, many others. So please come and pay us a visit. Okay, everybody, we are here at the grave of William Thomas. And as I had mentioned in our intro, we'd be talking about the Cumberledge and Thomas family massacres. So there's a few reasons why I wanted to talk specifically about this massacre. One, it directly affected my family. I'm a direct descendant of Joseph and Alice Cumberledge, and indirectly descended from William Thomas through other lines of the Thomas family. But also, I wanted to talk about that for a couple other reasons. One of which is a lot of the local histories really never spoke about this massacre much. It may be mentioned briefly here and there, but not much is written about it. However, we do have lots of interesting records that relate to this, and I wanted to kind of talk about how a historian can find information that history missed. So the book I've got here with me is called American State Papers. It was published by the government in 1834, and this specific volume talks about Indian affairs that happened in the country between 1789 and 1815. So, interestingly enough, there are two accounts in here about the Thomas and Cumberledge families getting killed. And I'm going to read those to you guys right now. John Evans, Lieutenant of the County of Monongalia, to the Executive of Virginia, 25th April 1789. On the 23rd instant, the Indians committed hostilities on the frontiers of this county, killed a captain, William Thomas, Joseph Cumberledge and his wife, and 2 children on Dunkard Creek. This has alarmed the people in such a degree as to occasion them to apply to me for assistance. Later that day, William McCleary wrote to the governor of Virginia from Morgantown that an express came here this morning with the disagreeable news of Indians having committed hostilities on one of our frontier settlements on the 23rd instant. 2 parties attacked nearly about the same time, 2 families on Dunkard Creek, about 20 to 25 miles from this place, and killed 1 man out of 1, and the man, his wife, and 2 children, which was the whole of the other family. The alarm given to the frontier of this county generally by this murder hath become very serious, and unless some speedy assistance is given, I am something of the opinion that the Monongahela River, which runs by this place, will be our frontier line in a short time. So that happened right here in 1789. Now, I'm going to read you guys another account from the Pittsburgh Gazette that was published May 2nd, 1789. Now, I want everyone to realize that this happened right on the border of Pennsylvania and West Virginia, at the time. So some accounts will say Pennsylvania, some will say West Virginia. Even after the Mason-Dixon line was drawn, the border areas, there still was a little bit of confusion about where exactly the line was. So I'm going to read this account from the Pittsburgh Gazette, and then we'll talk a little further. Pittsburgh, May 2nd, 1789. It is with singular concern we announce to the public that on Saturday, the 25th of this ultimo, a party of Indians murdered on the headwaters of Dunkard Creek in Washington County 5 persons, 1 man by the name of Joseph Cumberledge and his wife, also a man by the name of William Thomas, and 2 children. It is unnecessary to make any comment on the impropriety of wasting time and money in holding treaty with the savages, as long experience has shown us the futility of such measures. We have now only to trust to the exertions and energy of our new government, and flatter ourselves such effective plans will be adopted as to extirpate this country of such savage neighbors. The following deposition will show the truth of the above. Washington County. Personally came before me Henry Van Meter, one of the justices of the peace for the state of Pennsylvania and county aforesaid, Absalom Van Meter and Gabriel Eakins, and being duly sworn on the holy evangelists of Almighty God, deposeth and saith that they helped to bury 5 people on Dunkard Creek on Saturday the 25th of this instant, April, killed by the Indians, and 3 of them scalped. The names were William Thomas and Joseph Cumberledge and his wife, the others children, and further say not. Signed, Absalom Van Meter and Gabriel Eakins. Sworn and subscribed before me, Henry Van Meter, this 29th day of April, 1789. So that all happened right here. And again, remember, in 1789, Greene County had not yet been formed, so we were still part of Washington County. So lots and lots of name changes around this time. This was a very, very interesting time in our history. The world was changing. Things were moving, shaking all the time. And the historical accounts, if you're not familiar with those dates, can read somewhat confusingly. So we know a little bit more about this massacre. It actually received the attention of George Washington. The communications that I read to you first that went to the governor of Virginia actually made it to General George Washington, and in several communications and letters that still exist to this day, written by George Washington to various government officials and military officials, actually make mention of this attack. This happened towards the end of the Indian hostility times in our area, and was sort of the last straw, I guess you could say. I guess we've got something driving by, so bear with us for a second. I'm not going to stop the video. Here's an ambulance that's going down the road behind me, so bear with me for a moment. Okay, it seems to be gone. Thank you. So this attack actually led to the beginnings of what would culminate with the Battle of Falling Timbers in 1794. This is when the settlers finally decided that peace couldn't happen without action. And sadly enough, it wasn't the settlers that caused this problem. The colonial governments of Virginia and Maryland and their relations with the Indians were not always successful. And unfortunately, the people who benefited the least from that were the settlers and the Indians. So this specific attack kind of started a chain reaction that led to General Mad Anthony Wayne fighting the Indians at the Battle of Falling Timbers in 1794. Very, very interesting. I'm not going to go into a lot about that here, but it's definitely something worth reading. And when you do so, make sure you check out American State Papers Indian Affairs. You can find it on Google Books. And look at some of our other sources. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit more of the narrative of this attack. Samuel Wiley did talk about it briefly in his History of Monongalia County, West Virginia, which was published in the 1880s. So, between that, these accounts, and a handful of other sources, we can put together a fairly complete picture of what happened here. So, we know that William Thomas and his family was actually attacked first. His cabin was somewhere very, very near to this site. In fact, the Thomas family home was just over there. It was torn down a few years ago, so Thomas's cabin would have been very, very, very near here, if not on the spot we're sitting right now. The Indians attacked his home, and he was killed immediately. His wife and an infant child actually escaped and fled. They actually fled that direction towards where my family, the Cumberledge family, lived. So Mrs. Thomas and her child, they fled and hid in a hollow log overnight and witnessed the Indians coming past them. After the Indians passed them, they went upstream and attacked my family, where they killed Joseph, his wife, and 2 children. Either later that day or within the next 2 days. It kind of varies depending on the account. Gabriel Eakins and Absalom Van Meter found the bodies of William Thomas and Joseph and Alice Cumberledge and his wife. Now, the attack happened at 2 separate locations, but it was sort of one event. And in the deposition, Gabriel Eakins and Absalom Van Meter say they buried William Thomas very near to where they found him, and that was right here. This is his grave. And where we were at the intro with the rock shelter, Joseph and Alice Cumberledge are buried in unmarked graves in the cemetery above that rock ledge. In fact, I'll throw in a picture of that here in a minute. So that was that attack. And I'd also like to say that if anybody out there that's watching this video has done research and has found interesting things like this that a lot of the local history's missed, and there are lots of things that the local history's missed, please feel free to check out our Facebook page and find the information on the Greene County Historical Society 2020 History Project and send that stuff to us. We want to put together a new book that has your stories in it and that brings some new information to Greene County history. So please, if you've done research and you've learned things that we may not necessarily know, share it with us. And it doesn't have to be stuff that happened 200 years ago. It could be stuff that happened 100 years ago. It could be stuff that happened yesterday. History is something that continues. It's not something that ends sometime in the past. And I think something that COVID-19 has showed all of us is that we are currently living in times that will definitely be remembered in history. So thank you, and we'll continue on with our video. Bye. Okay, welcome back. So we're back here at the rock shelter, and one of the interesting things about this is just up above me, and in some cases literally several feet above my head, is my family cemetery, the Cumberledge Cemetery, just outside of Brave. So we've been talking about the attack on the Thomas and Cumberledge families, and we're actually going to get into a little bit more of the Cumberledge side of the story now. So Joseph and Alice Cumberledge lived in a cabin probably very near to where we are right now. And they were attacked on April 23rd, 1789. And both Joseph and Alice and two of their children were killed during the attack. That was the entirety of their household. And luckily, for me especially, their oldest son George was still living in Maryland at the time. In fact, just a month prior to their attack, he was married in a Lutheran church in Frederick County, Maryland. George wouldn't end up in this area until 1802, when he claimed his father's land. And if you have a little bit of Cumberledge in you, we are all descended from George. So thank you for joining us, and we'll get on with our video. Bye. Thank you for joining us, everyone. This will conclude installment number 2 of our reading club. Thank you for joining us. I just want to give you guys a little bit of a idea of what we're trying to do here. In these videos, what I'm trying to do is not just talk about specifically what we're reading in L.K. Evans' Pioneer History, but really to expand on that book and put it into the greater context of what was going on during the times that we were talking about. So far, we've talked about Native Americans and Indian massacres. Next week, we're actually going to be talking about specific places in the area. Among those are going to be Gerard's Fort, Fort Jackson, which is now Waynesburg, Ryerson Station, and a couple other places. And once we're done going through places, we're going to start looking at the sections in L.K. Evans' book about specific people that have lived in Greene County. So next week's reading assignments are going to be on page 15, which talks about Mapletown and Carmichael's, page 40, which talks about Fort Jackson, page 55, which talks about Pursley Creek, page 87, Albert Gallatin and Greensboro, page 104, Gerard's Fort, and lastly, page 122, Ryerson Station. So thank you very much for joining us. I hope everyone's having a good time with this. And I'm trying to make these videos in such a way that even folks who aren't reading the book along with us might still get a little bit out of them. So we thank you. And I would also like to thank the Greene County Community Foundation and United Way for making this possible through funding through the Greene County Emergency Response Fund. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week. Bye.